And good morning, everybody. We're super glad to have you here. I am Clarissa Constantine. I am the founder of the Parent-Tween Connection, which launched just a couple of years ago after, I should say, in my 21st year of life as an SAT and ACT coach. And so today we have Katherine OBrien, founder of Celtic College Solutions, and Linda Hollenback, founder of Hollenback Consulting with us. We're going to be talking about the ups and the errors and the ups and the downs and so many questions surrounding college admissions relative to SAT and ACT scores. So if you have not yet, if you're here and you see the chat window, we invite you to please go ahead and tell us where you're from. Tell us what grades your kids are in. And as we go, if you've got questions, please definitely go ahead and pop them in the chat window. I will definitely be monitoring that as we go. So for those of you who may not live on Zoom like some of us do, just to give you a little bit of acquaintance or orientation here. We've got all the controls down at the bottom so you can keep yourself muted. We welcome you to come on video if you'd like to engage and interact with us. If you have a question verbally, feel free to go ahead and unmute and interject, or comment in the chat window. That's totally fine as well. As a note, we are recording. This is going to be recorded and shared with everybody who registered. We did have some folks who couldn't join us in person, and so we agreed that we were going to record it and send out the links. So even if you do have to leave early, know that we will get that out to you. Hey, Dusty, glad to have you. She just joined us. And if you would like to make sure that your screen always shows you whomever is speaking next to the presentation, if you click up on the view in the top right-hand corner of your Zoom window, you can select side-by-side speaker. And that way you'll simply have the presentation along with the speaker herself. So where are we going today? Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Parent-Tween Connection and how it is that all of us came together today, then SAT and ACT briefly, and then we're going to launch into all of the aspects that colleges are considering in the absence of or in addition to SAT and ACT. So first things first. What is Parent-Tween Connection? Parent-Tween Connection is my brainchild personally, and we now have 4 separate pieces that all pull together, largely centered around our Facebook group. Our Trusted Expert Network, we've got 2 of our trusted experts here today. The way I look at it is everybody knows you go to Angie's List to find a home repair professional, or rover.com if you want a dog walker, but where do you go to find the Catherines and the Lindas of the world, or the therapists or the coaches or any of those professionals that you need to support your kids? That's the goal of our Trusted Expert Network. The next step is Parent-Tween University. This is a piece of helping bring the knowledge that all of these professionals have to you in a consistent, codified, organized fashion. Hopefully by the end of this year, once we get through the pandemic and all of that cray-cray, we are going to have local communities. We've got folks here from Pennsylvania. Linda's out in Pennsylvania. Katherine is in Dubuque, Iowa. I'm in the Denver, Colorado area. We have professionals from literally 3 to 4 time zones at this point, and folks in our Facebook group, again, from across the country. So we want to give you opportunities to get together in person and get to know each other. And also coming this year is our Parent-Tween Foundation. You know, it's one thing for us to say, hey, here are all the professionals who can help you. But the next step is saying, hey, if finances are a problem, let us help you actually access them. So for more information, you can hit the website, our Facebook group, our Facebook page, all that jazz. But then let's actually talk SAT and ACT. So I'm in my 23rd year as an SAT and ACT coach. I've seen a ton of changes, but probably none so drastic as we've had this year, thanks to the pandemic and the fact that
video's off.
Michelle, I'm going to mute you. There we go. You know, for years and years and years, SAT and ACT have been significant components of college admissions packages. But the test optional, test blind train has been gaining some steam in the last few years. Number of schools have decided to step away from SAT and ACT, but then that's been accelerated thanks to the pandemic, because if any of you have seniors or who are going into freshman year, at college, you know that they had some challenges even getting their SATs and ACTs taken last year. I had one student who had her ACT canceled on her 4 times last year, just because of the pandemic. Like, she'd show up, or sometimes she got notice and sometimes she didn't. One time she just showed up to East High School in Denver, and like the doors and like the gates were locked and she couldn't get in. So needless to say, it was a stressful time. But part of this is that it's really pushed colleges to go, hey, let's look at all of the other stuff that comes into the test or the admissions process. So if your kids are looking still at taking SAT and ACT, and Linda and Catherine are going to address this in terms of, like, you know, whether you should still be planning to do that now, you know, where they see the tipping point potentially coming, that kind of deal. But that is something that I can help you with. So if you've got questions about that, definitely reach out to me, and we'll have all of our contact information at the end. But we didn't come here to talk SAT and ACT. We came here to talk about what happens when we don't include those in packages. So I would love to officially introduce to you Katherine OBrien, founder of Celtic College Consultants, and Linda Hollenback of Hollenback Consulting. They are, as I mentioned, 2 of our trusted experts, and they have joined our team saying, hey, we recognize that if we band together and we work together, we can ultimately help that many more families. And they are just huge proponents of getting education into parents' brains and into kids' brains, so that you guys have at least a common basis from which to start or continue conversations. So Catherine and Linda, I'm thrilled that you're here with me. Catherine, why don't you start and give us just a quick background of your experience, and then Linda will have you do it, and then we'll get going.
Sure. Thanks, Clarissa. I'm so glad to be here, and just delighted to be part of the Parent Tween Trusted Expert community. I have 6 kids myself, and my youngest is a sophomore. So I've been through this high school testing, college application process a number of times with my own kids. But for the last 16 years, I've been working as a college consultant with families all across the country, helping their kids really figure out who they are, where they want to go, what the best paths are for them, and then how to pay for it as well, and getting them through the entire process. So been really invested in helping kids become the best versions of themselves and really identify who they are and where they want to go, how they want to change the world to make it a better place, and use the gifts and talents that they have along with their personalities and their interests, and bring that forth out into great universities and opportunities. And obviously testing is a piece of that, one of the hurdles they have to go through. So I'm glad to have the opportunity today to kind of discuss how admissions is really shifting in this world. It's test optional, test flexible, not looking at tests. Some still want them, how all that's going to work, and translating that into kind of real English for real parents.
Absolutely.
Linda?
Real English. It seems like so much of it isn't actually in real English. All right, Linda, how about you?
Well, thank you, Clarissa, also for having me and for allowing me to be part of the Trusted Expert Network. And I'm super excited to be here today with Catherine. We're both independent education consultants, but I really love that we both share a passion for helping empower this next generation to make the world a better place. That was kind of when we first met, when I joined Trusted Expert Network, I was just so excited to meet someone who has shared that passion. Mm-hmm. I call myself a college career strategist. My background is in education. My whole career has been in education. I taught high school Latin for a couple of years before going on for my master's in higher education management. And most of my career was spent working at the universities themselves, serving in a variety of capacities. So in my practice, it's about finding that fit, helping students to gain confidence in what their passions and strengths are, and then helping them to tell that story effectively and authentically through both the college search process, but also I support families through college into launching their career, and telling that story through their resume and cover letter and interview. So I kind of do both the to and through college, but with that same North Star in mind of how do they want to make the world a better place, and what are their true passions and values and goals, and how can they align the work that they do through their education and through their career to that.
Awesome. Cool. So that gives you a little bit of background about our professionals. And with that, let's rock and roll. Let's talk holistic admissions. So this is a catchy term. We hear it in a lot of places. And this is one of those places, like Katherine was saying, like bringing it into English. What does that actually mean?
Sure. So holistic admissions, and they were using this term even before the pandemic. This was kind of the catchphrase that you'd hear admissions officers. And basically what that means is that they don't want any one piece of the puzzle to define the applicant. They want you to know that, maybe you had a rough freshman year. Maybe your grades weren't, you were kind of getting your feet on the ground, or maybe even sophomore year, you had a health problem and your grades struggled. That's not going to be held against you because they're looking at the whole picture. It means they want to see the whole puzzle put together. So it is the grades, and it is the courses that you chose, and it is, in the case of where testing comes in, testing, and it is the activities that you do, and it is the person and values that you are and how they relate to the school that you're applying to. So it's really looking at the whole picture of who you are, what you're trying to achieve, and how you see this school as being the place for you to achieve those goals.
Interesting perspective. Okay, Katherine, any other thoughts?
So there, how to put this? So there were kind of rival strategies in admissions and how to evaluate. And Linda just did a great job of talking about holistic. And so one of the ways to define something is looking at the inverse. And the inverse would be things like the UC program and the CSUs that had a Regents Index, or some of these schools were on their website, you multiply your test score times this and your GPA times that, and so many courses in so many ways, and you get your points and you get a number. And literally they were using that number along with your financial information to do a lot of their vetting of their applicants. And holistic admissions, as Linda said, started long before this whole situation with test optional and things really grew through the pandemic. And it was to stand in contradistinction to that situation where you're a number, like, no, we're going to look at all of you. And happily, with the shifting now going on with the testing, we're having more of that holistic feel because none of us is a number, at all. And so each student getting to present his or herself with the dynamics of who they are and their emphasis, and they have their academic abilities and their dreams and their hopes and their interests and all of that, and bringing it together. It's easier to crunch numbers. I did engineering undergrad. That's a whole lot easier than, I did theology in grad school, when you've got to deal with people and personalities and backgrounds, and it's a lot more complex, right? But that's more real.
And to be clear,
so bring it together.
When you say CU and CSUs, you're referring to California, correct?
Correct, not Colorado, California. Yeah, I spent 20 years in San Diego, so yeah.
Right. Katherine and I go back to our days when we both lived in San Diego, so we both always have to make that distinction, especially for me now that I live in Colorado. So, all right, cool. So within the getting to know all of the other stuff and not becoming a number, what does that involve? What are all those other things? Because I know we've got some folks who've got juniors, so we're getting, right into that crunch fun time. But we've also got a couple of parents here who have like 6th and 7th graders. So how early do they start looking? What else do we need to start looking at? So where do we go with that, Katherine?
I'm always excited when I get the opportunity to talk to parents of younger kids, because you make some really important decisions in the 4th and 5th grade, especially with regard to the math sequence and the foreign language and when they're going to start that. And those pivot things, and they open and close doors for colleges that you're not even thinking about when you're dealing with your 4th and 5th graders. So what the colleges are looking for, I'll talk about the transcript piece to start with. So when a college sees a transcript, we parents tend to think of, okay, this is a list of my kiddos' courses and their grades. Awesome. But we don't realize what admissions is seeing. Admissions is seeing grade trends. So maybe, as Clarissa mentioned earlier, one of you mentioned that your freshman year might have been not so great, or you've got a real dip and you can really see this child excels in math and science and their English is just sort of average, or it's average and then it got better. and they look at that. Or there was a life event that happened, and so sophomore year, maybe second semester, the grades all got hit, and it's like, okay, you've got great grades, and then that semester, and you talk about that event in your life. And so they're going to look at that. They're also going to look at your course choices. Some of our kids are very happy skating through getting their A's in their honors classes or in their regular classes, but staying away from that next level up, taking the AP or the IB or the honors class and challenging themselves a little bit more. And the more challenging and rigorous the academics are at the university, the more important it is for them to see that you have challenged yourself with the difficult classes in your high school. And they look at you in context. So we have kiddos everywhere from homeschooling, and mom and dad are selecting their courses, to schools that offer full IB programs and tens and dozens of AP courses. And they look at the student in context, because if you have a little school perhaps that doesn't offer any AP or IB, you have to be looked at in that context, because that student that's sitting there with 12 AP classes, that because they had them available and they took some, looks, wow, they did so much more. It's like, but in your context, you did what you could. You did everything you could. And so they have to see that as well. So they're looking for all of those things, the course selections, how you're challenging yourself academically, those grade trends and shifts, and your context at your school. Okay, Linda, I know there's other aspects. You want to talk about some of those?
I mean, I definitely want to reiterate that did you, within the context of your school, did you challenge yourself, and then did you rise to that challenge? Seeing, even if it's just small incremental growth, you went, maybe you've pushed yourself in your math, and so you took that honors class, maybe you got the B your freshman year. Can you push it to a B+ in sophomore year? Did you learn how to access the resources to support your success over time? Did you create a study buddy, and did you work with your teacher? Did you take advantage of tutors? So looking at how you challenged yourself and rose to that challenge, and over time, that is so critical. That is definitely the number one thing. When I worked at the colleges and would look at transcripts, that's what I was looking for, to see the growth over the 4 years. Just to note, I know Katherine mentioned, the thinking about things pre-high school, but from the college context, what they're only going to be looking at is 9th through 12th. So yes, there may be an opportunity in your district to accelerate the math sequence starting in 8th grade, but they're not going to look at that 8th grade score. They're just going to look at the 9th through 12th, and they're going to see that from the context of your school and the math curriculum that your child is accelerated. In addition to the academics, the other piece is the extracurricular. That is another important component, because the academics is what your child is required. That's their job, quote unquote, to go to school and to hopefully get good grades, to the best of their abilities, working within their abilities. But what they need to also do is what do they like to do with their time? That's the extracurriculars are giving the colleges a context of who are they as a person, what do they enjoy doing, where are their interests, how do they contribute to the community? Because what the colleges are trying to see, it's not about seeing a laundry list of activities, but the colleges want to see, again, what are they doing when they have a choice versus the job of going to class. And also, how are they contributing? Because they're trying to kind of extrapolate, how might they contribute at my college and in my community? What kind of citizen are they going to be for me? And so those extracurriculars could be the clubs at the particular high school, could be things that they do in the community. It can even be hobbies. It can be part-time jobs. Extracurricular doesn't, most families think of that and only think, well, Johnny, you need to get in a club. It doesn't have to be a club if Johnny doesn't feel drawn to any of the clubs. It's more about what Johnny wants to do with his time.
Yes, and that also gives admissions that greater context, because now we're seeing that Johnny got these grades in those challenging courses in the context of caregiving for a grandparent, or they're an athlete and they're running the newspaper, or whatever their things are that they're doing. And they're really seeing, how can you manage your time? How do you manage stress? How do you balance your priorities? because as we know, you need to be able to do all those things well to be successful at college. Yeah,
For sure.
and another aspect that I think that they look at is what your clarity is, what kind of work you've done in terms of what you want to do. Why do you want to come to our university? You know, say you want to be a journalist and you've got all these interests, you've done all these things, and we don't even offer that major. So why are you looking at us? You know, and you're thinking in your head, but my boyfriend's going there, so I want to go there. And the college is going, we don't really fit. We don't really offer what you need to continue to excel in the ways that you obviously are gifted and interested in excelling. So we're going to say no to you because it's not a good fit, not because you're not academically qualified to be here. So that clarity of where you're going is another piece that comes into it.
Absolutely.
And I just, on the kind of another side of that same coin, you know, for example, a student who says, I want to be a chemical engineer, the college has chemical engineering, but when the college looks at the profile, looks at, you know, the academics and sees a lot of strength in the English and the history, and the sciences have kind of struggled. And then they look at the extracurriculars, and you've been on the newspaper and you've published a poetry, you know, you've been in a national poetry contest. If they don't see anything, any connection between what your academic profile and what your extracurricular profile is saying that you want to do, and then what you're telling them that you want to do, there's a disconnect. It becomes like, as an admissions officer, I looked at it and said, do they really want to be a chemical engineer, or is this what mom and dad are telling them to do because they're going to get a good job? And as a result, I'm going to give away one of my coveted chemical engineering spots to someone who, after the first semester, is going to switch out and become an English major, because that's where their love is and that's where their strength is. And so you want to make sure that you're allowing for the authenticity of your child's, you know, where your child's strengths and interests are. But if the teen really does want to be a chemical engineer, then what are you doing? What are you telling in the story? How are you telling the story? How are you creating opportunities for your story to tell them that you want to be that chemical engineer? How do you create opportunities within the resources and the means and the community and network that you have to make that connection and show them that you've been thoughtful about wanting to be a chemical engineer?
Awesome.
More than just checking the box.
I'm going to interject for just a second. Actually, I
want to address Holly's question. I think that's what you want to tee up.
Exactly. So we had a question that came in. First of all, Denise mentioned she's got a 2E or a twice exceptional kiddo in a private school, and she's really glad to hear this because nobody's actually ever suggested honors or AP classes to him. So hearing this has been powerful. So in case the two of you aren't looking at that, thank you. And then Holly actually had a really good question. She says, how do these actually, like all these activities and extracurriculars that we're talking about, what's your sense of how schools are evaluating them, given that like we've been on lockdown for the last year and many of their extracurricular opportunities have evaporated or at least been stunted or stalled for a while? And I know one of her kiddos is 10th grade, Holly, 11th grade, right in the sweet spot where they're sending in their applications. So Catherine, since you were going to address it, why don't you start?
Thanks. So that additional information section on the Common App or some similar section, you must use it to give the college admissions people your context, because they are going to get a school report from your school, which will tell them some things. We're doing, you know, hybrid, or we're on campus, or we're off campus, or whatever they're doing. And sometimes they'll mention the extracurriculars are open or closed, but that's just the ones based at the school. So you as the student applicant need to let the school know what your circumstance is. And it might be that you've got, you know, 2 computers at home and 4 students and 2 parents trying to share them to work from home and all that stuff. So give them that context and think of it as like a news reporter. You want to give information of what's going on so they have that context. And then you need to also challenge yourself in this area, because I have students that have been in complete lockdown that have started businesses, that have started movements in their schools, that have started meetups and other ways of gathering kiddos and adults and doing things in their area of interest. So lockdown, yeah, everybody was in shock the first few months. And as we do when we have a big change, it takes a little bit to get our legs under us. At this point, we've been at this for a year. And our kiddos are the most dynamic in the population. And so we really need them to be creative. And if that's sidewalk chalk on the sidewalk because people walk up and down your road a lot and you're writing cheerful messages every day, or if it's sending letters to the nursing homes or something else that they're doing, the colleges are looking to see, in the context of this great difficulty, what are you doing and how are you managing to continue to further your interests? And as a homeschool veteran of many years, I really have worked hard with my clients to give them projects and plans and help them formulate those, because there are tons of online courses available and other ways that they can pursue their interests that are available. And there were a ton before all this started, and now there's even more. And so there's, in a sense, in my head, really no excuse. I don't say it that way to a teenager, but in my head, I'm like, there's no excuse for you not to be doing things. And if you're sitting playing video games all day, that's not a path of success. So let's get you engaged in something that you are.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a multi-billion-dollar industry now. So,
but if they're programming or they're designing stories or those sorts of things, right, as opposed to actively working in it, as well as passively playing or exploring what's out there, but they have to have an active component of their developing their interests.
Right.
If they're just playing all day, yeah, they're exposed, they know what's out there, but they're not really working on developing the skill sets to make any more of it any better than it is.
Right. And she says that her kiddo actually has started a business and a YouTube channel relative to the direction that she wants to pursue. I actually follow her on YouTube. She's a pretty talented artist. So awesome. Thank you, Katherine. Linda, I'm going to ask you to address that, but then I have another question that came up as y'all were talking about extracurriculars and academics. From your experience at the collegiate level, evaluating applications, how much reality or how much truth is there to, hey, high school seniors, you better keep your grades up because you can get unaccepted?
I mean, I've certainly heard of it happening.
Okay.
But I don't think it's, happening in the thousands all over the place. It is definitely something to be concerned about. I mean, if you're going to be an A student and you got yourself into a top tier school and now you're going to nosedive, there are thousands of other kids clamoring for that spot on the wait list.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't care about your academics enough to maintain, then that's problematic and doesn't set you up to say that you're ready to be successful when you get to college. Right. But it's not, I don't want to just say, oh, it's never going to happen.
Right.
It does happen, but it's kind of more of the exception than the rule.
It's not licensed to say, let senioritis kick in, you're fine.
No, it's rare, but it does happen.
So Holly actually just asked another question. She says, due to grading standards where your grade can only improve, will there be a factor in looking at the 4.0 GPA? I'm not sure I understand that well enough to.
Yeah, because some schools are locking in grades and the kids can only improve and they.
Oh, got it.
So that's, I think, what she's talking about. And yeah, it will be a factor because those are artificially inflated grades. And that happened a lot. I know last spring, all the schools, so on the school report, they're disclosing their grading policies and how they've shifted them in the pandemic, and admissions will be looking at that. And that's one of those hard places because that's where they like to see the test scores to kind of validate the grades. And they do that a lot with the homeschoolers, but they will do it with the kids in regular school as well, especially with this grade inflation and those freezing kinds of things. And so if they can get them, they will love to see your AP scores, your IB scores, CLEP scores, which is another program the College Board has parallel to AP. AP is kind of high school equivalency of college. CLEP is college credit by examination. So they're parallel programs. So you can do CLEP scores. And then there's also the CLT, which is the Classic Learning Test, which has been out for the past 5 years. It's an alternative to the ACT and SAT. It's only officially accepted at about 200 colleges and universities in lieu of the SAT or ACT, but there's hundreds and hundreds and probably thousands at this point of other schools that have seen it. The research is all there that can correlate it, but it gives another data point to validate, yeah, my A really was an A, or my A plus, or whatever, and helps validate that. Linda, do you have some more?
I mean, the only other thing, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, colleges, the admissions officers typically are, I mean, every school is a little bit different, but most of the time it's tied by region. And the reason that they do that is so that way the admissions officers can get to know the school counselors and get to know the schools. And, particularly, I mean, they're not going to know every single high school and every single district, but especially ones that regularly send applicants to that particular college. They have an idea of where the curriculum is and how rigorous it is, and how, is an A really an A, and how does their A compare to, another school in the region's A. So they're looking at your teen first on their own, and what does their package say. They're looking at your teen in context of the school and what they call the school group, so the other applicants from your same high school. And it's not just to kind of get, because when I say that, a lot of times parents get, so does that mean they're just going to list them down by a GPA and cut the line, and these are the ones they get? It's no, again, they're looking holistically. They're looking at the whole package. How many of the challenging courses did they take? If they have maybe lesser challenging courses, but they have a really extraordinary extracurricular, they're looking at all of that. But then they're also, again, they know their region. That's their job as the admissions officer. So they kind of know the context of the area and how different schools, kind of where the rigor is. So they're going to be looking at all of that. Honestly, the GPA number itself is not the most important, because every school is different. Is it on a 100-point scale? Is it on a 4.0 scale? Is it on a 12.0? Is it weighted? Is it unweighted? So they're really looking at the courses and the individual courses for that, the grades for that course. And a lot of times most colleges have their own little tool to kind of recalculate the GPA based on kind of how they see the rigor and how they factor it. So it's not, don't get caught up on the GPA, your child's GPA number itself. It's more of, did they challenge themselves with the curriculum that's available to them? And, did they rise to that challenge? Did they show growth? And if they are a straight A student, fantastic, that they've maintained that. But then how else can they distinguish? Because there are a lot of straight A. I mean, the Harvards and the Penns and the big tier schools of the world could fill their entire freshman class with all 4.0 GPAs and 1600 SATs if they wanted, but they don't, because that's not what they want.
Right. Well, and so the thing that I keep, the underlying theme that I'm hearing, right, is that on the admission side, they're looking at the entire student, the entire person, more than perhaps we've thought historically, or maybe what was the experience when, back in our day. And that brings me to possibly another conversation we can have another day in time, another workshop on finding the right fit colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
So important.
Because this
Absolutely.
isn't, for so many years, I've seen students in a position of, I'm competing with all the 4.0, 1600, 36 ACT, perfect polys, if you will. How am I ever going to get in? And I'm like, but you don't want to go to Penn or Harvard or Yale. So why are you even considering that? And it seems like my feeling has always been, to the extent that I dabble in this realm, that if you are more diligent on the front end of finding schools that are a good fit for the student, the likelihood of admissions goes up, because the student has already done some of that pre-evaluation of like, this is why I want to go to this school, not just because my boyfriend is going there or because my parents want me to be a chemical engineer, but because I really like everything about this school for me. And so maybe we'll make a note of that, and we can have another conversation around evaluating colleges, visiting colleges, those kinds of things.
I mean, honestly, that's why I left working at the universities and why I do what I do. I mean, I was the academic advisor at Penn, and it broke my heart to have a student. It didn't happen a ton, but it happened to have a student in my office kind of struggling academically and just in tears because they got wooed by the big name and really hadn't thought about fit. And while they were certainly capable of being successful, they were not feeling, they didn't feel comfortable. They weren't in a place that they felt confident in themselves, and they didn't have an environment that they felt was the right match for them. And at that point, now they were paralyzed because they didn't know how to tell mom and dad that this Ivy League school wasn't the right fit for them. And that's, I mean, that was heartbreaking. So that's what, I mean, that is honestly, that's what led me to do what I do, to give the secrets away before you get to college, you know, to get you thinking before. So hopefully you find that right fit, because that is so important. And honestly, that's what makes the better application, is when you can say to the school, it's, you know, it's not only that you have the program that I want, but here's the deeper level that I thought about, not only your program, but your campus, your community, your environment, your opportunities, and how they fit me and what I'm trying to achieve. Because as the reader, that's what I was looking to see is, you know, can I see their dreams, and do I think I can help them achieve them? Do I feel like I'm the best fit for my school's the best fit for helping them to achieve those dreams?
Right. Yes. And I got into this the same way, but I was that student. So I was at Northwestern, started with chemistry, moved into engineering. Thanks be to God for a professor who helped me, but Northwestern was not the right school for me at all. You know, I got my engineering degree from there, but it was not the right major, and it was not the right school. And thank God for the Newman Center, the Catholic Center, which is where I did all my hanging out and all my socializing, because I just really didn't fit into the general milieu very well at all. And Northwestern's a phenomenal school. They have great offerings and they were doing a lot of things, but it just wasn't where I belonged. And so that was the impetus too, when I was looking for what would I be doing, because I wanted to really reach into other kids' lives who were like me, that 16, 15, and 14-year-old, not really sure, getting pushed pretty hard by mom and dad, but not knowing my own voice. And it wasn't until my senior year. And in my case, it was pretty severe. My parents never came to visit me when I went to graduate school, and they didn't come to my graduation or anything. My mom actually died about 15, 20 years after I finished grad school, never knowing I graduated with honors, because she was still so upset that I wasn't doing engineering, which was the, you know, square peg she was trying to put this, or the round hole she was trying to put this square peg into. Right. And she just never could really let go of her dreams for me to let me be me. And I really want to do the same thing as you, Linda, empower these kids so that they are on a campus where they could just thrive in every dimension and just fly and go out there and do phenomenal things, and not have a bunch of stuff they've got to overcome because they just went through more trials in college. And you know what, that's some other kid could have done with my spot. Yeah. Mom wanted the jacket.
And that's such a tough conversation. You know, I again, in my time, it's, you know, I really do believe parents want what's best for kids. And in my own experience, I know that that's what my mom wanted, except her definition of what was best for me wasn't the same as my definition as what was best for me. And it didn't work out well all the time. But anyway, so academics, it seems like the theme that we've got is within the context of the academic opportunities at high school, or whatever your high school is, challenge yourself. Even if it means you get a B in an AP class, that's the college would rather see that you've challenged, and they're looking more at the overall trajectory, not the finite number. So step up to the plate, step up to that challenge. And like Linda, the term you used was, did you find the resources to help you embrace the challenge or rise to the challenge, something like that? So the colleges would definitely much rather see that. I do want to take just a minute and comment. I don't know all the families that we have here, but if you do have any athletes who are looking to get to potentially get recruited, I have some background with this. My husband's in this space as well. One of the tidbits I wanted to add in is if you do have your kid in this, or have a student athlete who's looking to play D1, D2, potentially get some money for it, make sure that you're looking at the NCAA and NAIA requirements, because that is another piece that is a critical component. If we're going to have a kid who does actually get athletic scholarships, even though the school from an admissions perspective may not require the SAT or ACT, the NCAA does, to the best of my knowledge, still hold these requirements. So definitely make sure if you're in that subset of the population that you're paying attention to those, because if you say, oh, I'm only applying to schools that don't require it, but then the NCAA says, well, you can't play if you don't meet our metrics. That's not a place we want to find our kids in. So I've got, sure in the link that I send out that these are hyperlinked for you, but if you are in that realm, please do make sure that you're paying attention to those. Catherine?
And I was just looking this morning to see if there were any updates on this. And there was an article in August from the NCAA talking about them being test optional for 21-22. And if you think about it, August 20 is a really late time to be talking about 21-22. So I would be as conservative as possible, which means I would go for tests. If I have any option to take that test and have those scores, I would do that. But for the 21-22 school year, they were waiving scores for kids who had at least a 2.3 GPA. And the NAIA, I looked them up also, and it looks like, it's not as clear in the way that they put it, but it looks like they're also waived with the exception of homeschooled students. And that's my population that's the most worried, because that's the population that is demanded, test scores are demanded of more often, because the variety of places that people get courses. And so the colleges really want the validation on the academics. So an awful lot are still requiring test scores. And in some states, that's been an impossibility for a year now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's getting to be quite stressful for some of those families if we're doing alternative tests and the CLT and taking CLEP tests and other things that they can access. But I would reach out through the eligibility centers for the NCAA and NAIA, because they're both, like everybody, struggling to adjust their policies and wanting to have the ideal, which for them is the test score, but knowing that it's not available to a lot of kids in a lot of places. So they're trying, but I would definitely be doing your due diligence on those if you're an athlete.
I think the communication and it's particularly important for the student athletes, but all the way around, even for a student that's not an athlete, building the relationship and having conversations with the admissions officer, with the professor in the department that you're interested in, for you to help you to find that fit, to help you to make sure that you understand the requirements. In most cases, if schools have gone test optional, their financial aid and scholarships have been shifted to test optional for the year. But in some cases, they may still require that SAT or ACT, right, if you want to be for the most competitive, those full tuition and half tuition scholarships. So make sure you're checking and having, building that open communication. Most of the information, they're putting it out there as quickly and as plainly as they can. But if you don't see what you're looking for, or you're not sure, pick up the phone and call. When I worked at higher ed, I was happy to talk. I will say I was preferred to talk to the student, to see that the student was truly the one interested in my school, and that they were taking ownership of it. But that doesn't mean you can't be on the call with them to ask a question, or that you can't kind of strategize the questions that the team's gonna ask beforehand. Be the whisper in their ear, but let them take the lead and have the voice.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. I wanted to double check. I saw Denise had asked a question about kids who struggle with testing due to disabilities. And Catherine, you had indicated that with the number of test optional schools, there are an increasing number of schools that's not even going to be a concern for you, Denise. What I will say is, if it does come down to a situation where you've got, he's got his heart set on a school that he wants to go to that is not yet test optional, call me. I know you personally know how to find me, but I can give you some more test specific insight in terms of accommodations and that kind of realm. So let me know. I don't want to hijack the conversation, but I want to make sure that you know that I'm here to help if you have questions on that.
But also going back to what Catherine said earlier, the additional information box on the Common App is such an awesome tool for anything like that. So if you've got something, if there is some kind of unique quirk that you're like, I just wish I could explain, that's your box to explain. If you don't do it in the main essay, if it doesn't make sense for it to be part of the main essay, then that additional box, and it's not, it's not about framing or, giving an excuse. Well, he just had a, bad, even if it's a bad grade and it was, they goofed off during last spring, with the whole pandemic debacle, moving to hybrid, whatever. It has to be framed not as making an excuse, but framed as fact of what happened and how they, I mean, particularly in that case versus, the case of a disability, but in that case, how they rectified it, how they sought to improve moving forward when they realized that this was it. So, kind of taking accountability, ownership of it. In a case of disability, explaining, we understand my test scores aren't where your school, but here's where, here's the situation. And if there is a true disability where accommodations are in order to take advantage. I know there's a lot of students who are eligible, but like they don't want to out of a pride. It's about utilizing the resources available to you. That's not a sign of weakness. All the greatest successes in the world leverage their resources, use their network and community. Encourage and teach your child or teen to embrace that mindset, because that's how they're going to be a success in life. No, none of us are successes on our own.
Not even close. Not even close.
It's a hard lesson though. And as a teen, especially when you think you're invisible and you think you're going to, conquer the world and you don't need mom and dad's help and you don't need anyone else's help. That's not how it works.
Right. So here's a question that just came in. She says, our struggle is that our junior currently has no idea what she wants to major in or what colleges she's even interested in. What do we do?
They're my favorite students, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because the truth is they never have no idea. Maybe they haven't yet been willing to share it with mom or dad. Maybe they haven't yet been able to be honest with themselves, but deep down, they know some of the things that they light them up. They know that they like their English class better than their math class, or their biology class better than their chemistry class. And you use that as the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
One of a coach, Holly McLean, once she shared with me this tip, and it's brilliant. So when you're having that conversation and teen says, I don't know, you have to do it lovingly, and you have to do it kind of quietly and with a little bit of a pause. But just quietly say, but what if you did know?
Uh-huh.
And pause and wait. You can't do it with attitude, but what if you did know? Right. That's not going to work. But if you say it quietly and lovingly and opening the space for them to reveal what they're feeling deep down that they may not yet be willing to admit to themselves. But what if you did know? It's amazing what you will uncover. Mm-hmm. By giving that space and that silence and offering that openness for them to think about and to share the couple of little nuggets they may know that can lead.
Right. And getting them to know those nuggets. And then part of where we come in to help them is to connect those nuggets or strands of interest to careers, because they don't know, what are those things called? Who would ever hire me to do this, this, and this in this circumstance and pay me around that much? They don't know what the names of things are, or if they might know, well, I'm thinking about being a lawyer, but they don't know what being a lawyer is. And we help them bridge those gaps. So get to know those nuggets and strands of interest inside of themselves, and then connect those dots, and vice versa. Oh, you're thinking this, well, what does that actually mean? And breaking it down and making sure there's a connection in there. And we can, that's what we do. And we do that with the majors. We do that with getting their voice for their essays. We do that with finding the right fit for their schools.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's our favorite. At least for me, that's my favorite part. That's, really getting to the heart of that, asking them kind of, what impact do you want to have on the world? Not necessarily the big wide world. I'm not telling them they have to, solve cancer or create world peace, but what little part of the world do they want to have an impact on? What would feel really good if they were looking back? If we fast forward their life and they're looking back, what little piece would they felt really good about making a difference in? And then, and part of it, it's not their fault if they don't. I mean, we teach them, you get their biology class, they get their chemistry class, a lot of kids like the business is something like that's a separate curriculum. If you're in the AP track, you're not really going to get a touch of business. But the world doesn't work that way. Like you might be a designer, but if your design can't be manufactured by the engineers, where is it going? If you're an engineer, you can manufacture something, but it's so costly to produce that the business people can't sell it and market it, and no one will be able to afford it. Well, then where's that brilliant engineering design going and structure going? Mm-hmm. The world is much more interconnected, and colleges realize that and see that. And there's a lot of majors, unique majors that are much more interdisciplinary. It doesn't have to be so siloed. And so that's where Katherine and I come in, because we know that, and we see, so we can help your student to kind of go, well, you like this and you like this and you like this. Have you thought about this? And this brings these together. Or you can, it doesn't have to be either or. It could be a both and, or it could be here you major in this one, but you also really like this. So, you tack that on, whether it be you take some courses or you do a certificate or a minor, and you can kind of create that bigger picture that really speaks to what you want to achieve and where your passions are.
And it seems to me, Katherine and Linda, that so much of what you're doing is helping in many ways prevent like the me's of the world, where I locked down a degree in audio engineering that I'm still paying off, and I'm not doing a thing in the audio engineering world. And like so many of us, we get into our 30s and 40s and we're like, well, what we were interested in then, or what we thought was the right path then, now that we know ourselves a little bit better, we're going in a different direction. And there's nothing wrong with that. But goodness, if you can help kids figure out at least a more general direction that's a better fit for them earlier, we can, help them avoid where some of us land, where it's just a second or a third career down the road, So, hey, in order to honor everybody's time, let's take a last conversation or last bullet point on demonstrated interest. I don't remember which of you proposed this as a topic, so we're going to popcorn. Okay, Katherine, rock and roll.
Katherine.
Your point.
Yep. So demonstrated interest is an item that is openly shared by the selective schools, that they like to see that the kids really, they're on their list, they've touched base, they're following their social media, that kind of thing. But I was doing a little bit of research and finding that a lot of the colleges are looking at the kids' social media, and our kids are not thinking about that. And so, the initial app review, it's increasing, when you get to holistic and test optional, there's a more likelihood that as they're getting to their final candidates, they're going to take a peek at that profile. When they're getting to the enrollment yield, that second tier, that's enrollment yield is, if you're accepted, will you come to our school? That's the school's business side, looking at making sure they get enough students, paying enough money to make the budget balance at the end of the year and have a good cohort for their class. And so if they're in that final decision in that area, they're going to be looking at social media with a higher percentage of the students. And then the scholarships and the deep interest and the deep pocket things, you better believe they're going to be checking social media. If you're looking at like Linda mentioned, the full and half tuition scholarships, those presidential and regent scholarships that are worth so much money, if you've got a lot of nonsense and unpleasant and uncomfortable things out on your social media, guess what? It's not going to happen, because that's not what they want their presidential scholars looking like. So depending on kind of the situation that you're in and that the school's in, there's an increasing likelihood that they are going to look at the student's social media profile. So that's something that our kids need to be aware of, and they need to go clean up sometimes what they've got out there and be aware of that avenue as a way of presenting themselves to colleges who, and the greater world, future employers and things, because a lot of that stuff doesn't go away. So they need to
I think it does.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Teach your teens about privacy. If they're, teach them about discretion, about what they put out there. But if they're going to put it out there, at least make it private. Don't have, if they want to have a second, a second more public page for a project they're working on, or some cool thing that they've done, have that as a separate one that they can give to the colleges. But their personal stuff, lock it down. Lock it down. I mean, again, this is another one like the grades and the senioritis. Doesn't happen a ton, but we've all heard the stories about admissions being repealed because someone put something, racist on their social media, or they put something that was just, did not align with the values of the institution.
Well, and then there's
So
also
you
the
don't want your
fact
kid
that
to.
I've seen kids posting pictures of illegal activity. Teenagers drinking, teenagers smoking pot. Yeah, I know here in Colorado, pot's legal for adults. It is illegal for minors. And if you go posting a picture of it, there absolutely can be legal ramifications. So there's so many things. Yeah.
Lock it down.
Okay, moms and dads, you have 3 professionals here telling you have backup to tell your kids that they need to be responsible about their social media use to the extent that our voice matters. So, all right. Yeah. Are there any other questions, or I'm just checking our chat window. Any other questions that we haven't addressed for anybody who's here yet? And of course, I can't see if anybody's chatting. In my online classroom, I can see if they're chatting, so I know whether I'm waiting for somebody to respond. Aha, that was next, Dr. Dusty. By the way, if y'all need an audiologist here in Colorado, Dr. Dusty rocks. So you can absolutely find all of us together at parenttweenconnection.com. Linda and Catherine, would you please go ahead and just type your emails or websites, however you'd like people to contact you or most easily find you, put those in the chat window. But the easiest way to find all of us is at parenttweenconnection.com. And I believe that contact information, your individual, Catherine's and Linda's contact info is on their profiles on our Trusted Expert page on our website as well. And so with that, the last thing that I wanted to mention is that we are launching a podcast. Our goal is mid-April, and Linda and Catherine are both going to be guests on it. So definitely, if you're interested, hit our website and click on the podcast page. You can sign up to get notifications when we go live. And it sounds like there were some very positive responses, Linda and Catherine, to a conversation about choosing colleges. So let's circle back. And for all of you who were here, we will definitely let you know when that comes out. And if you have questions, feel free to stick around. You got it, Denise. Thanks for joining us. Thank you to all of you for being here. And if you've got questions, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up, and we'll get this link out to you early next week.
I have a similar to the conversation about holistic admissions. I have like a roadmap on my website that you can download for free if anyone's interested. It kind of has a lot of the buckets that we were talking about in terms of exploration and challenging curriculum. So
awesome. Sure. Thank you.
Catherine has something similar.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.